When the animators are done with all the visual tickets, the scripters are still a long way from done. The job of a scripter is basically to link all the possible assets we get from various departments, like anything from the artists and animations, texts and music, with a certain logic, and link them together, and that's eventually the actual game. Here in Visionaire, you have a pretty good overview of the screen, over all the objects, exits, positions, waypoints, clickable objects, hotspots, graphic layers, and so on. The whole game is basically made up of exceptions, and each chapter has several odious rooms which almost drove animators and scripters alike insane. There's a mini-game, the Jackalope Machine. You can create different creatures, and based on 5 different key traits, you can create all kinds of combinations. Frankly, that means there were more than 243 different possible creatures. It may look like nothing but a wall of text. We have conditions, basically variables which tell you true, false. Then there are things set like the tinfoil hat or hatch open or something like that. And in the actions, we just assemble whatever we want or need. For me personally, the most complex room was 3004, Elysium, Chapter 3. The big room where everything collapses in the end. Must have been at least 60 graphic layers which collapse piece by piece, and new animations and Rufus leaps. And connecting all of that and also making it look good, making it work without bugs, that really took a while.
I think for me the defining moment of Deponia was, and it was also the most incredible, when I realized just how big the game is.
So I was looking at the project, then looked at the deadline, and all I could think was, holy shit, this isn't doable. The game is way too big.
We already worked on this game quite a long time. Nobody knew the complete story. And at some point during development, I think it was December, we had a meeting where Pokey told us the actual story.
Because for a long time, we had no idea what was going on in this installment. After that, we were just as perplexed as before, because it was such a complex story with all the time travel and the parallel dimensions.
And when he told the story, I mapped all the things in my head that were still missing. And there were many, many things.
We had planned for 45 screens, and eventually we ended up with more than 100, almost 130 in-game screens in the final game. What you probably won't notice is that the game originally had 6 chapters. And now it has 8. The whole time, I claimed this would be a shorter, smaller Deponia to calm people down. As a matter of fact, though, you have to keep raising the bar. In my defense, you have to keep raising the bar. Because of that, we have 4 different kinds of time travel in the game. Right, and they all interact with each other. And this is not because we are so consistent and consider each separate time travel technique, but because we just couldn't decide which one we'd pick. And so we just picked all of them. We just assume that they're all theoretically possible. And I have to point out the following. There's a little Easter egg, and that is, if you play the game twice, you may notice. It's really short, and Pokey has no idea it's there. We just did it and implemented it. It's a little joke hidden in there, and I still have time to remove it, only if he finds it, and I think you'll be quicker than him. It's a small detail, but it's extremely cool. Who cares? Do you know anything about this? Nobody knows. Never mind. What did you smuggle in there? Now I won't be able to sleep. Thanks for that. See you at the release. I have a really strong connection to Pimpy the Clown. He's an outstanding character. But I have to say, even if this probably makes my girlfriend jealous, I honestly must admit that Pimpy's girlfriend is kinda hot. Schnixie. Schnixie is actually one of my favorite supporting characters. We have about 30,000 lines in this document. Now you have to picture that that converts into a 3 to 10 megabyte text file. For all of you who've never opened something like that, it takes a while to load it. That's how you know it's a lot of text. That, of course, means that we went into recording right in December. First, the German voice recording here in Hamburg. Then, after New Year's Eve, the English recordings in London. Pokey and Ben here from our localization department were there together. We had at least 60 characters and about 20 actors. If things go smoothly, or let's say if things go normal, you can do 100 lines an hour, probably a bit more. And going at full tilt, you get even more done. When things go really well, that's about it. And now you can kind of imagine how long it takes to record about 70,000 words or 30,000 lines, roughly. For the German recordings, we spent about 3.5 weeks in the studio. For the English lines, we actually only needed 2. I have no idea how we did that, but, well, time paradox. This, of course, also meant that Pokey, during a very, well, important phase towards the end of production, and as the man who's basically the main designer for the team with the game's fundamental vision in his head, just wasn't available. No, son. I really had a great time voicing Pimpy, although one thing I gotta admit, I totally forgot one thing, and that was that the idea behind Pimpy was to give him his own song at the end of the chapter, basically a romantic or love song. And I gave him this voice, you see, son. And I just kept putting off writing this song for a very long time and just didn't write it. There was this really incredible composition on the once again incredibly awesome soundtrack by Finn. Pimpy was actually the song I started with. We were on a relatively strict timetable for the whole production, and I was on vacation in Denmark. And I thought to myself, it's all kind of pins and needles. I really wanted to do something. And then I thought, okay, Pimpy would probably be the perfect first song for me, something to work with. So the first thing that came to my mind was, of course, Elvis Presley. And we do, in fact, use an Elvis Presley song, not really as a reference, but as an inspiration. And that was the foundation for the whole thing. And that song had to be composed now, and as a consequence, we had to take that romantic song and twist it into something intimate, well, something a little greasy, with a dirty and awkward feel to it, through instruments and performance. Those are the parameters I talk about with Pokey, just how we need this song to be. And at the end of the day, he comes up with good lyrics and an interpretation while he's in the studio and produces everything for the English part of the production. And it's really exciting to eventually see the final result. And I postponed the Pimpy song so long that we were already recording the English one in the studio by that time. And I knew I couldn't do the English Pimpy myself. And then we recorded the song, and I was really nervous since we've just finished writing, so I was pretty excited how it would translate, and suddenly they give us this perfect Barry White-ish guy. You were right, love is just like the sea. And all that another octave deeper than I just did.
You were right, love is just like the sea. Baby, just as deep and as wide, I agree.
And as I was sitting there, all I could think was, and this is the bass line now? I hadn't sung the German version yet. I didn't even finish writing it, because at some point we had to focus on the English lyrics so much. And holy shit, I actually had to compete with that.
There are sharks, crake, and venomous eels.
I wanted to put on sunglasses to get into the groove, and there were a few pairs just lying around. In fact, they were only 3D glasses from the cinema. So I sang the song wearing 3D glasses. I think the song somehow gained a few more layers because of that. It became multi-dimensional.
Doch Pimpy, oh Pimpy, oh Pimpy, der Clown.
Of course, while you're in the studio, it's nice to see that, for one thing, the lines are as good as you wanted them to be, but mostly that the people are having a good time. While working on Deponia 4, my job was as lead animator, as people call it these days. And as a kicker, just like in the other parts, I also got to voice 2 small character roles. For several years now, he has been lending his voice time and again to the characters of our games, with much joy too. And so he came to voice Ronnie as well. I was even allowed to sing as Ronnie. Thank God Ronnie can't sing to save his life. And he isn't supposed to either. That's why this worked so well. I feel pretty comfortable when I only play music and don't have to sing. That's why it actually was a bit of a challenge for me. But in a small recording booth, when I sit on my own and nobody sees me, then I'm not inhibited and it's no problem. Yeah, the lyrics. The lyrics have a very subtle humor to them. And honestly, no holds are barred. I mean, you really don't want to see the things sung about here, or otherwise the game would be rated R, I guess. And that's no option. But you can sing about those things. Yeah, it was great fun too. As I said, I can personally distance myself from the character. It actually scored an A. A, double A with a star. Yeah. It really is the best song in the game. It's Ronnie's song.
Ja, Spaß ist, wenn man trotzdem lacht. Und jetzt alle!
Most professional voice actors come from a milieu where they mainly do shooters and gritty RPGs and stuff. When they're in the booth, they start reading our lines and halfway through realize what they're actually reading, bursting with laughter in the midst of recording. That's big praise. That's when the job is great fun, to see that they have a great time too and enjoy doing some comedy for a change. Those are very talented people who very often are wasted on an orc general, barking his one-liner, that's it. You can see that they're happy to do something with more meat, so to say. For Deponia 4, for example, we got David Hayter, the voice of Solid Snake. That's pretty awesome to work with people like him. You realize they're just normal people who enjoy the job as much as you do. They're not just there because someone threw money at them. For an older variant of Rufus, we naturally looked for a suitable voice in the German as well as in the international version. And well, I always thought he must sound like the action hero Rufus himself hears in his own head, since, you know, it actually is a narrator's voice in his head the whole time. Eventually, we decided to cast the German voice of Liam Neeson. Bernd Rumpf, who I think he enjoyed it very much.
Nichts. Der Organon hatte die Tür zum Sprengturm versiegelt. Frei nach dem Motto, wenn hier jemand den Planeten sprengt, dann wir. Lachhaft.
That's when things got crazy, when we dealt with the question of what we do in the English version. To keep the overall focus during the concept phase, I basically scribbled the whole game in advance. And I thought, what would he look like? And then I drew him a mustache and a scar, and suddenly he looked like Solid Snake. And when we still didn't have any idea who'd voice the older Rufus in English, should Bruce Willis do it, or... Unfortunately, he wasn't available. We did ask, though. Tough luck, Bruce. Liam Neeson didn't want to. No, wait, we didn't even ask him, to be honest. Because the moment when we threw all those names around, it dawned on us, and this was again Ben who said, why not just ask the original Solid Snake? You think that's possible? Can we do that? And so we simply did it, and now he's in the game. David Hayter, good man.
The Organon had sealed the door to the blast tower, as if to say, if anyone is going to blow this planet to hell, then it's going to be us. What a joke.
The recording itself was really funny, too. He didn't know what he got himself into, what kind of game was coming his way. So he just started and got into the role, but relatively normal and moderate. Granted, it was an action hero voice and hard and all. And I was like, nice, but could you give us some more grit, David? Well, sure, but I thought, wouldn't I sound too much like Solid Snake? No, that's fine. Just go ahead. And now we got Solid Snake in our game. It's a cocktail of joy to know that it's done, that we've made it.
It's still fun, though, to work with Pokey. At the same time, it's utterly insane, and you really hate him at times, but you also really, really love him because of his insanity.
Emptiness. What should we do now? I hope you all like what we did here. What I'll do now is get some sleep somehow. Vacation? It's simply a very rewarding job. If you spend so much time with just the text and then it all comes together nicely, that. Or maybe the next project? I really get to go all out, show it to him, and he's like, all right, that's what we want. And then I think, awesome, can't imagine things going better than that. Or maybe some gaming? Something other people made?
I like the fact that you finally get to know why Rufus and Tony broke up.
In the beginning, I didn't think that we'd pull through like this. That's something I gotta say. It's a weird, but at the same time nice and slightly confusing feeling during the first days. It is every time. I think it'll turn out cool. It was a genuine pleasure. At first, I thought you couldn't do a fourth Deponia. It'd be totally awful and everybody would be annoyed by it. But the opposite was the case. But sometimes you have to work things out like that. Summarized, it's a meta-plot containing time travel spectacle and a sidekick study. That was probably a bit more than 1 minute, but it surely deserved that. All the best, and this is definitely the last Deponia. Honestly, you can believe me when I tell you. Really, believe me. Okay, bye-bye. Bye.